Accessory chromosome, see supernumerary chromosome. Today's Dr. Will's CBMD PhD. Today is November 28, 2016, 1:11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is the Dictionary of Biology. Abdomen. 1. Vertebrate body region containing viscera, intestine, liver, kidney other than heart and lungs, bounded anteriorly in mammals but not other classes of diaphragm. Posterior arthropod trunk segments exhibiting tagmosis in insects but not in crustaceans. Abaxal, of a leaf surface facing away from stem. Compare AD axle. Abducens nerve. 6. Vertebrate cranial nerve, mixed but mainly motor, supplying external rectus eye muscle. Abiotic environmental features such as climatic and pH-IC factors that do not derive directly from the presence of other organisms. See biotic. Abomasum, the true stomach of ruminants. Abscisic and abscissant dormant. Inhibitory plant growth, substance, a sesquiterpene presence in a variety of plant organs, leaves, buds, fruits, seeds, and tubers. Promotes senescence and abscission of leaves, induces dormancy in buds and seeds, antagonizes, influences the growth-promoting substance. Believed to act by inhibitory nucleic acid and protein synthesis. Abscission layer, layer at base of leaf stalk and woody dicotyledons, and gymnophytes in which parenchyma cells become separated from one another through dissolution of the middle lamella before leaf fall. Absorption spectrum, graph of light absorption versus wavelength of incident light, shows how much light measured as quanta is absorbed by a pigment, e.g. plant pigments, at each wavelength. Compare action spectrum. Abyssal, inhibiting deep water roughly below 1,000 meters. Akinto, class of primitive, usually minnow-sized fossil fish abundant in early Devonian freshwater deposits. Earliest known as gnathostones, bony skeletal tissue, fins supported by very stout spines, several accessory pairs of fins common. Row of spines between pectoral and pelvic fins, heterocircle tail, relationship with OS technothene fish, uncertain but probably not directly ancestral. Today's Dr. Will's CBMD PhD. It is Wednesday, November 30th, 2016. It is 4:18 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Acanthopteryl, spiny-rayed fish, largest superorder of telehost fish. Spiny rays in their fins consist of solid pieces of bone, and not numerous small bony pieces. Are unbranched and pointed at their tips. Radial bones of each ray are sutured or fused, preventing relative lateral movement. Often have short, deep bodies and relatively large fins, making these fish very maneuverable. Acari, Acarina, order of Arachida, including mites and ticks. External segmentation much reduced or absent. Larvae usually with 3 pairs of legs, nymphs, and adults with 4 pairs. Of considerable economic and social importance, as many are ectoparasites and vectors of pathogens. Accessory bud, a bud generally situated above or on either side of main axillary bud. Accessory nerve, 11th cranial nerve of tetrapod vertebrates, unusual, originating from both brain stem and spinal cord. A mixed nerve whose major motor output is to muscles of throat, neck, and viscera. Accessory pigment, pigment that captures light energy and transfers it to chlorophyll. Chlorophyll, carotenoids, glycobiloproteins. Accommodation, changing the focus of the eye in man and a few other mammals occurs by changing the curvature of the lens. At rest, lens is focused for distant objects and is focused for near objects by becoming more convex, with contraction of the ciliary muscles in the ciliary body. Acellular, terms sometimes applied to organisms or their parts in which no nucleus has sole charge of a specialized part of the cytoplasm, as in unicellular organisms, applicable to synthetic organisms, e.g. many fungi into tissues form synthetium, sometimes referred to as unicellular. Acetabulum, cup-like hollow on each side of a hip girdle into which head of femur thigh bone fits, forming hip joint into tetrapod vertebrae. See pelvic girdle. Acidification, see fermentation. Acetylcholine, ACH, neurotransmitter of many internal neuromuscular and other cholinergic effector synapses, relays electrical signal in chemical form with transduction back to electrical signal at the postsynaptic membrane. Action, simply dry one-seeded fruit formed from a single carpel without any special method of opening to liberate seed, seed coat is not adherent to the pericarp, may be smooth-walled, e.g. buttercup, featherly, traveler joy, spiny, e.g. corn, buttercup, or winged, hermed, samara, as in sycamore and maple. Achiasmate and meiosis lacking chiasmate, one form of aberrant chromosome behavior. See suppressor mutation. Acid dyes. Dyes consisting of an acidic organic compound, anion, which is actively staining part, combined with inorganic cation, e.g. eosin stain particularly cytoplasm and collagen. See basic dyes. Acid hydrolase. Any hydrolytic enzyme whose optimum pH of activity is in acid range. Many different examples occur in lysosomes. Pepsin is an acid protease. Acid phosphatase. One of several acid hydrolases located in lysosomes and concentrated in the transmose cistern of the Golgi apparatus. Acid rain. Rainfall precipitation with a pH less than 5.6. Rain dissolves carbon dioxide, forming carbonic acid, giving it a normal pH of 5.6. But lower pHs result as it dissolves atmospheric pollutants such as oxides of nitrogen and sulfur dioxide. Some acid rain results from effects of atmospheric ozone production, some natural and some attributable to human activity. Its most serious consequence is the release of cations from the soil, resulting in leaching. In the case of Mg ions, that leads to chlorosis of leaves and poor plant growth, even death. Aconized cells lining tubules of pancreas and secreting digestive juices. Their secretory vesicles, zymogen granules, concentrate the enzymes infused with apical portion of the plasmalemma under the stimulus of acetylcholine or cholecystokinin, releasing their contents into the lumen of the duct, much used in the study of secretion. Acrasiomycota, acrasal cellular slime molds, those myxomicota which may exist separate amoeba, myxomeae, and retain their original identities, their pseudoplasmodium slug formed by swarming. The chromian point of attachment of clavicle and scapula in mammals and mammal-like reptiles, a bone process. Micropital bud, development of organs in succession toward apex, the oldest at base, youngest at tip, e.g. leaves on a shoot, also used in reference to direction to transport substance within a plant, i.e. toward the apex, compare basipital. Acrosome, specialized penetrating vascular organelle, formed from Golgi apparatus and part of the nuclear envelope at the tip of a spermatosome. It contains hyaluronidase, several lytic enzymes, and acidic hydrolase is released when the sperm cell membrane fuses at several points with the acrosome during the acrosome reaction, dissolving the jelly around the egg so that the sperm can penetrate it. Some sperm discharge an aromazole process composed of rapidly polymerization actin which punctures the egg membrane prior to fusion with ovum, e.g. in some echinoderms. ACTH, adrenal-corticotropic hormone corticotropin, a polypeptide of 39 amino acids secreted by anterior lobe of the pituitary, involved in the growth and secretory activity of adrenal cortex, has a minor positive effect on aldosterone secretion, but an important role in glucocorticoid secretion. Both stress and low blood glucocorticoid levels cause release from the hypothalamus of corticotropin releasing factor CRF, which initiates ACTH release. See adrenal gland cortisol. Actin, diagnostic eukaryotic protein absent from prokaryotes. Filamentous actin. F-actin is composed of globular protein monomers, G-actin molecules pulverized to form long fibrous molecules, two of which coil around one another in thin actin filaments of muscle and other eukaryotic cells, where they are termed microfilaments. Each G-actin molecule binds one calcium ion and one ATP or ADP molecule when it polymerizes to form F-actin with ATP hydrolysis. Actinomorphic, like microtubules, the opposite ends of actin filaments grow and depolarize at different rates and play a vital role in the cytoskeleton structure. Stress fibers are bundles of actin filaments and other proteins that lower the surface of cells in culture dishes and will contract if exposed to ATP in vitro. Microfilaments are involved in the building of filopodia, microspikes, and microileae, where, as in stress fibers, they form paracrystalline bundles. Filaments of actin and myosin are capable of contracting together in actinomyosin in both muscle and non-muscle cells, e.g. in the contractile ring of dividing cells and belt desmosins, and in cytoplasmic streaming. Actinomorphic, a flower is regular or capable of bisection vertically in two or more planes into similar halves, e.g. buttercup. Such flowers are also said to exhibit radial symmetry. Actinomycete, member of the order of Actinomycetae, of gram-positive bacteria with cells arranged in hypha-like filaments, mostly saccharotroph, some parasite source of streptomycin. Actinomycin D, antibiotic derived from species of bacteria genus Streptomyces, binds the DNA between two GC base pairs and prevents movement of RNA polymerase to preventing transcription in both prokaryotes and eukaryotes. Penetrates into intact cells. See antibiotic. Actinoptera ray fin fish, generally regarded as subclass of Osteotheres, and include common fish except sharks, skates, and other rays. Earliest forms of chondra streams represented by Devonian by Paleoniscoids, and today by E.G. Actinozoa, Anthenozoa, sea anemones, corals, sea pens, etc. Class of Colenterra, subphylum Cylindra, the body of pulp there being a mesozoid. Stage in the life cycle, pulp more complexly organized than the other colenterrates. Colenteron, divided by vertical mesenteries, may have external calcareous skeleton, well-known corals, but some forms have internal skeleton, spiculus and mesoglora. Action potential, localized reversal and restoration of electrical potential between the inside and the outside of a nerve or muscle cell, or fiber, which marks the position of an impulse as it travels along the cell. See impulse activation. Action spectrum, plot of quanta of different wavelengths required for a photochemical response against the wavelength of light used. Its reciprocal indicates photochemical efficiency. Activated sludge, material consisting largely of bacteria and protozoa, used in and produced by one method of sewage disposal. Sewage is mixed with some activated sludge and agitated with air. Organisms of the sludge multiply and purify the sewage, and when it is allowed to settle, they separate out as a greatly increased amount of activated sludge. Part of this is added to new sewage, and part is disposed of. Activation of eggs. When the membrane of sperm acrosome fuses with the egg plasma membrane, an activation reaction passes over the egg surface involving an action potential of longer duration than in nerve or muscle. It signifies the onset of embryological development and may be achieved merely by pricking some eggs, e.g. frog. Activation energy. Free energy of activation is the amount of energy needed to bring all the molecules in 1 mole of a substance at a given temperature to a transition state, when there is high probability that a chemical bond will be made or broken at the top of an activation barrier. Its biological significance is that enzymes accelerate reactions by lowering their energies of activation, principal factor permitting such complicated chemistry to occur at relatively low temperatures. Active site. Part of the enzyme molecule in its natural hydrated state, which by a three-dimensional conformation and charge distribution confers upon the enzyme its substrate specificity. It binds to a substrate molecule, forming a transient enzyme-substrate complex. Enzymes may have more than one active site and so catalyze more than one reaction. Competitive inhibitors of an enzyme reaction bind reversibly to the active site and reduce its availability for normal substrate. Active sites may only take on their appropriate conformation after the enzyme has combined at some other site with an appropriate modulator molecule. Some active sites require metal ions as prosthetic groups, e.g. human carboxyl peptidase requires a zinc atom. See enzyme. Active transport, the energy-dependent carriage of a substance across a cell membrane, accumulating it on the other side in opposition to chemical or electrochemical gradients, i.e. uphill. The process involves pumps composed of protein molecules in the membrane, often traversing it, which carry out the transport. Requires an appropriate energy supply, commonly ATP or a gradient of protons, across the membrane itself, usually generated by redox, photochemical, or ATP hydrolyzing reactions. Actomyosin, complex form when the pure proteins actin and myosin are mixed, resulting in increased viscosity of the solution. Actomyosin undergoes dissociation in the presence of ATP and magnesium ions. When ATP hydrolysis occurs, completion of this hydrolysis results in reaggregation of the two proteins. Adaptation. One evolutionary sum property of an organism is normally regarded as adaptation, i.e. fits the organism in its environment. If A, it occurs commonly in the population, and B, the cause of its commonness was natural selection in its favor. Adaptations are not therefore fortuitous benefits the implication being that they have a genetic basis since selection operates only upon genetic differences between individuals. Adaptive immune response ultimately by B cells to the presence of foreign antigens, in which large quantities of antigen-specific antibodies appear in the blood, while memory cells with antigen-specific binding sites persist with capability of rapid clonal expansion on subsequent triggering by the antigen. Adaptive radiation, evolutionary diversification from a single ancestral prototype population of descendant populations into more and more numerous adaptive zones and ecological niches, may involve both endogenicides and chitogenicides. Adaptive zone, a more or less distinctive set of ecological niches established and occupied by evolutionary lineage with time. Adaxole, of a leaf surface facing the stem, compare abaxole. Adenine, a pure base of DNA, RNA, some nucleotides and their derivatives. Adenovirus, one kind of DNA tumor virus of animals, C virus. Adenyl cyclase, adenylate cyclase, a plasma membrane-bounded enzyme converting ATP to cyclic AMP. Many peptide hormones and local chemical signals operate through activation of this enzyme. ADH, C antidiuretic hormone. Adhesion, cells of multicellular animal must be able to recognize and adhere to each other in order to group together as tissues. It is not yet clear how this happens, but intercellular junctions are involved in morphogenesis and multicellularity. Adipose tissue, a connective tissue, one brown adipose tissue. Brown fat comprises cells whose granular cytoplasm is due to high concentration of cytochromes and whose function appears to be release of heat in neonatal mammal. Distributed around the neck and between scapula and knees in hibernating mammals, but not otherwise extensively in adults. Richly innervated and vascularized. White adipose tissue is distributed widely in animal bodies, comprising large cells, fat cells, each with single large fat droplet inside a thin rim of cytoplasm. This depot fat is composed largely of triglyceride. ADP, adenosine diphosphate, a nucleotide diphosphate found universally inside cells, phosphorylated to ATP during energy-yielding catabolic reactions and produced in turn when ATP itself is hydrolyzed. Adrenal gland suprarenal ephemerik, endocrine gland of most tetrapod vertebrates lying paired on either side of the midline. One atop each kidney. Each is a composite of an outer cortex derived from coelomic mesoderm making up the bulk of the gland, and inner medulla derived from neurocrust cells of the ectoderm, rarely found as a composite gland in fish. Adrenaline, an USAF-nephrine hormone derivative amino acid tyrosine secreted by chromaffin cells of adrenal gland and to a lesser extent by sympathetic nerve endings. Adrenergic, of a motor nerve fiber secreting at its neuroadrenaline norepinephrine, or less commonly adrenaline, characteristic of postganglionic sympathetic nerve endings. Compare cholinergic. Adrenocorticotropic hormone ACTH, adrenal gland. Adventitious, arising in an abnormal position of roots developing from part of the plant other than roots, e.g. from stem or leaf cutting, of buds developing from part of the plant other than a leaf axil, e.g. from a root. Echiospore, binucleate spore of rust fungi produced in a cup-shaped structure, the Echium pl. echia. Parenchyma, secondary spongy tissue of some aquatic plants with intercellular space is formed by activity of a cork. Cambium, a phylogen, may develop in lesser way from the lentils of land plants such as willow, salix, a popular populus, if partially submerged, seems to function mainly in a flotation capacity rather than as a respiratory aid. Estivation, broad arrangement of parts in flower buds, zool or ormond, cy during summer or dry season as e.g. in lungfish, dipno, and sea hibernation. Afferent, leading toward as of arteries leading to vertebrate gills, or of nerve fibers, sensory conducting, an input towards the central nervous system, opposite of efferent. A-form helix, less common right-handed double helical form of DNA. Compare B-form and Z-form helices, and under some conditions the most stable form of double-stranded DNA. After ripening, dormancy exhibited by certain seeds, hawthorn, apple, which although embryo is apparently fully developed, will not germinate immediately seed is formed. Even when removed from seed coat and provided with favorable conditions, the embryo has to undergo certain chemical and physical changes before it can grow, possibly associated with delay in production of required growth substances or with gradual breakdown of growth inhibitors. See dormant. Agami spermae, any plant apomixis in which embryos and seeds are formed without prior sexual fusion. Excludes vegetative reproduction. Vegetative apomixis occurs widely in higher plants, both ferns and flowering plants, unknown in gymnophytes. See pseudogamy. Agar, mucilage obtained from cell walls of certain red algae. Mixture of polysaccharides, some sulfated, forming gel with water and melting at a higher temperature than at which it solidifies, used as a solidifying base for culture media and microbiology. Agarose, polysaccharide used as gel in Dulman chromatography and in electrophoresis, Southern blot technique. Aging, progressive deterioration and function of cells, tissues, organs, etc. related to the period of time since that function commenced. By dividing indefinitely bacteria and many protozoans, avoid aging. Higher plants often seem capable of unlimited vegetative propagation. Agglutination, sticking together or clumping as a bacteria and effective antibodies are through mismatch of agglutinogens of red blood cells and plasma agglutinins in blood transfusions. See lectin. Agglutinins, isoantibodies, plasma and cell surface proteins that by interacting with agglutinogens, antigens on foreign cells can cause cell clumping, agglutination, commonly lectins. Agglutinogen, protein acting as a cell surface antigen of red blood cells and interacting with agglutinins to cause red cell clumping and possible blockage of blood vessels, genetically determined and the basis of blood groups. Agnathia, class of subphylum vertebrates, sometimes also a superclass. Other vertebrates forming superclass Anostromata, modern forms of cyclostromes including lampreys, subclass Monorina, and hagfish, subclass Diplornia, but fossil forms included anaphids, osteostracans, and heterostracans. Agnostic behavior, intraspecific behavior normally interpreted as attacking, threatening, submissive, or fleeing actual physical injury, tends to be rare and most apparently aggressive encounters. Agrobacterium, bacteria genus noted for crown gall tumor inducting ability. Oncogenetic strains are host to a tumor-inducing TI plasm, ID which can be transmitted between species. A segment T of the TI plasma is transmitted to the plant host cell and is the immediate agent of tumor induction. Enfelton, a complex phycocolloid substance occurring in the cell walls of some red algae, Rhodophyta. Air sacs, 1. Expanded bronchi and abdomen, a thorax of birds initially in 5 pairs but 1 or more pairs fusing to form thin-walled passive sacs with limited vascularization. Ramified throughout the body and within bones. Connected to lung by small tubes whose relative diameters are probably crucially important in establishing a unidirectional passage of air from lung to sacs and back to lung. The avian ventilation system lacks the tidal rhythm characteristic of mammals. 2 expansions of insect trachea into thin-walled diverticula whose compression and expansion assist ventilation. Albumin, egg white of birds, and some reptiles comprising mostly solution of albumin with other proteins and fibers of the glycoprotein of amucoin. Contains a dense rope, Culla, Za, and with yolk supplies protein and vitamins of embryo, but is also a major source of water and minerals. Albumin, group of several small proteins produced by the liver forming up to half of human plasma protein content, with major responsibility for transport of free fatty acids for blood viscosity and osmotic potential. If present in low concentration, edema may result in kwashiorkor. Albuminous cells, ray and parenchyma cells and gymnophyte phloem, closely associated morphologically and physiologically with sieve cells. Alcyanary, order of cylindrids with the class of actinozoa, sea pens, soft corals, etc. Have 8 pinnate tentacles, 8 accentuaries. Pulps, colloidal with continuity of body wall, enteron, skeleton often with calcareous spicules with acinglio, and occasionally externally. Aldosterone, hormone of adrenal cortex, see osmoregulation. Aileron grains, membrane-bound granules of storage protein occurring in the outermost cell layer of the endosperm of wheat and other grains. Aileron layer, metabolically active cells of outer serial endosperm, in contrast to metabolically inactive cells of most of the endosperm containing aileron grains, several hydrolytic enzymes and reserves of phytin releasing inorganic phosphate and oxytol on digestion by phytis. Aleuroplast, colorless plastid leucoplast storing protein found in many seeds, e.g. Brazilian nuts. Algae, informal term covering many simple photosynthetic plants, including prokaryotic forms, cyanobacteria, prochlorophyta, although the majority are eukaryotic. Algin, a complex phycocholide occurring in cell walls and intercellular spaces of brown algae, phycophyta, and commercially marketed. Alimentary canal, the gut, a hollow sac with one opening, an enteron, and a tube said to be entire since it opens at both mouth and anus, in whose lumen food is digested, across whose walls the digestion products are absorbed. The epithelium lining the lumen is endodermal in origin, but the bulk of the organ system in higher forms of mesodermal and muscularized and vascularized. There are usually many associated glands. Alkaline phosphatase, broad specificity enzyme hydrolyzing many phosphoric acid esters with an optimum activity and basic pH range. Breaks down pyrophosphate in vertebrate blood plasma, enabling bone mineralization. Alkaloids, group of clinically important basic nitrogenous organic compounds produced by a few families of dicotyledonous plants, e.g. Solanaceae, Pachypernaceae, possibly end products of nitrogen metabolism, e.g. atropine, caffeine, cocaine, morphine, nicotine, quinine, and strychnine. Alkylating agent, a substance introducing alkyl groups, e.g. CH3, C2, H3, etc. into either hydrocarbon chains or aromatic rings. Alkylating of DNA residues important in regulating transcription. cDNA repair mechanisms, DNA methylation. Allantoid, stalk of endoderm and mesoderm which grows out ventrally from the posterior end of embryonic gut in aninoids, expanding in reptiles and birds into a large sac underlying and form much of its surface attached to the chorion. May represent precocious development of ancestral amphibian bladder. Alleles allelomorphs, representatives of the same gene locus, and such said to be alleles allelomorphic to one another, a relational property dependent upon the prior concept of gene locus. Identical and non-identical alleles occur being representative singly in haploid cells. Allelic complementation, interaction between individually defective mutant alleles of the same gene to give a phenotype more functional than there either could produce by itself, due to the interaction of hybridization of protein products, a source of confusion in the delineation of systems.